Fala pessoal, aqui é o PaterCast, estamos chegando com mais uma entrevista, aqui é Antônio Garcia.
Aqui é o Felipe Zapala.
Lembrando que o PaterCast é um movimento para resgate da paternidade. Hoje não é dia de conteúdo, é dia de entrevista. A gente vai entrevistar o nosso convidado, ele é um profeta para as nações, ele nasceu no Zimbábue, mora hoje na Austrália. You live in Australia, don't you?
Yeah. Yes, I've lived in Australia.
Mora na Austrália, o nome dele é David Gava. David, it's more than a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind invitation, and it's a joy to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Where do you live in Australia?
I lived in Melbourne and also in Sydney, but Sydney was the time that we lived there the most.
You was not born in Australia?
No, I wasn't born in Australia. I was born in Zimbabwe. Only went to Australia when I was about 22 years old.
22?
Oh. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So you were raised in Zimbabwe?
I was raised in Zimbabwe, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Harare?
In Harare.
Yeah, for the ones that don't know, Harare is the capital of Zimbabwe.
Oh.
And Zimbabwe is a country which is to the east of Africa?
Southern of Africa. It's next to South Africa.
Oh, it's
southern. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it really connected to South Africa?
Yes, it's connected to South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, and Botswana.
Ah, great.
Yes.
Great.
So do you have children?
Yes, we are blessed. Me and my wife, we are blessed to have two teenagers. Gabriela, she's 17, and Samuel is 15. So 2 kids.
2 kids?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were married with a Swedish girl?
Yes, my wife, her name is Ingela. Been married for 21 years this year.
21?
Yes.
Oh, it's a coincidence because I am married for 19 years old.
Yeah.
For 19 years. And I was born in 77.
Okay.
So you were born in 76?
Yes, I was born in 76 in April.
Yeah, very good. You're already 47? Or?
I'm actually 48. I just turned 48 in April this year.
Okay.
Yes.
Very nice, very nice. So tell me, you were born in Zimbabwe. How was your upbringing in Zimbabwe?
I was actually born in a country called Rhodesia, which is now called Zimbabwe. It only became called Zimbabwe in 1980. It used to be called Rhodesia because Rhodesia was under the British rule. And so Zimbabwe became independent in 1980. So I was born in Rhodesia, then became Zimbabwe.
So I imagine the original name was Zimbabwe, then was transformed to Rhodesia, and then was back to Zimbabwe or not?
It was more like, Rhodesia then got transformed into Zimbabwe. So, I mean, it's like, when I was born, it was during a very intense season because it was during the cross-racial marriages were very taboo, and so racism was very high. And so even in the 80s, after Zimbabwe became independent, racism was still very much there. So there was a lot of segregation. So I was born into that world and began to see the transformation and the change.
You was born like in the transition.
Exactly, yeah. And that's when things were very intense.
What is the original language over there?
I would say English because it was a British colony, so we spoke English. And also there's other dialects like Ndebele and Shona. I can speak Shona because my mom, she came from the Shona side. Yeah.
Are there like many tribes?
Yes. Africa is it's very tribal.
Because there's this problem in Africa when the English or the Europeans, they tried to design the countries, but they didn't respect the tribes.
Yeah.
So the design of the countries does not respect the distribution of the tribes. So you have many tribes within a country, and it's wars, like Rwanda and stuff.
Yeah, it's very much prevalent even still today.
Okay, and you mentioned that you had like multiracial.
Like my mom was black Zimbabwean, and my father white German. So I come from the crossroads. So being born was very intense because of the two racial divisions. And so for them to be married was considered taboo. So when I was born in 76, I lived with my grandmother actually.
Oh yeah.
And so because I was almost like an illegitimate child, I had to be hidden.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I had to be hidden. And so my grandmother would move from one place to another. So for the first 2-3 years of my life, I had to stay in the house. I could not leave the house. I had to stay inside the house.
That is insane.
Yes, yeah.
Like a little Moses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
how did his wedding, like your father, what was he doing in Zimbabwe?
Like it was through also business as well. So he came from the business side. And my grandparents, my mother's parents, were very wealthy because my grandfather, he used to train the Rhodesian cyclists for the Olympics and all that.
Oh.
So how he acquired his wealth was he wasn't given money, he asked for land and cattle. So he was very into business. And so that's how he grew his wealth. So it was through businesses that my father's side and my mother's side came together.
But then your mother's side was eventually farmers.
Yeah, my grandmother was a teacher. My grandfather was into business and also into sports and also into farming as well. So he was like a jack of all trades, basically.
And do you have something like this for your father family? You know the origins. And
the origins was mostly business.
Yeah,
was mostly business because from the German line came to South Africa then to Zimbabwe. So it was mostly business. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was watching one of the podcasts that you recorded,
yes,
I got curious about your father.
Okay.
Because our podcast is all about fatherhood.
Yes.
And you don't mention him much.
Yes.
I don't know if he was forced to flee.
Yes.
Right after you were born, or I don't know what happened.
Yeah. After I was born, my father fled. So I never met my father.
Oh.
I grew up without ever knowing whether he was alive or whether he was dead. Only until the age of 24, that's when I found out that he was still alive.
You found him?
Yeah. No, I never met him. We spoke many times and we planned to meet about 6 or 7 times, but it never happened.
But you did have the opportunity to talk to him?
Yes, I spoke to him when I was 25 for the first time.
Oh.
Yeah.
How was?
It was very weird, actually, because I was in Australia and three random people came to me and said, there's something about you about German. And I'm like, okay, I don't think God is calling me to German. And in the afternoon, someone came to me, I just sensed something about you about German. Because growing up, I really had never had the opportunity to ask my mother about my father because it was more like dishonoring to her. And so I never really, even though I had questions of like, who am I also want to know the other side of my family, but out of respect and also not being able to speak for 21 years as well because of the speech impediment I had, I didn't have the luxury to be able to ask my mother. But I had so many questions, and 3 people when I was in Australia, random people said, something about you about German, something about you about German, something. I was like, this is very different. And the next day, I felt the Lord say to me, you are going to get a call from your mother, and she wants to share something with you. And for me, when I heard that, I was preparing for my mother to tell me that maybe she's dying or something like that.
I imagine.
And so I was really nervous. And I got the call next day. But it was actually from my sister. And my sister says, David, you really need to come back to Zimbabwe. And I was like, can you tell me, because I'm in Australia, you want me to come to Zimbabwe? What's going on? Is my mother okay? She was like, I can't say much. She really wants you to come.
Oh.
And that really made me so nervous.
What a mystery.
Exactly. So I prayed, I was like, Lord, what is this all about? And then I felt the Lord say, it's something about you, about Germany. And so I flew back to Zimbabwe and I met my mom. And after about an hour arriving, I asked my mother a question. Mom, tell me about German. And then she just said, your father is going to phone you in an hour. Yeah. And I was like, my father, what do you mean my father? because I knew my father all along probably was dead. That's the conclusion I'd come to. He says, no, your father's going to call you in an hour. And in an hour, he called. So I'm 25 years old.
Just the phone or
No
video?
On the phone. And
There was no video.
There was, So
It was back there.
that was around 2001.
Okay.
So we spoke for the first time on the phone. Can you imagine the conversation?
Awkward.
I was like, hi, how are you? I'm fine. And I think he had done his best to try to look for me, but everywhere he was going, he was hitting a roadblock. No one couldn't really tell him where I was. And my mother remarried. She changed her last surname. And so life moved on. And so, we had quite an interesting conversation.
And then afterwards, you did have the opportunity.
we planned to meet. I was like, okay, since I'm in Zimbabwe, I'm flying back to Australia, and I can meet you either in South Africa. And so we planned to meet, but he never then called to confirm. And so then I flew back to Australia. And when then he called me when I was in Australia, and because I'd given him my number, he says, I can come to visit you in Australia. We planned to make it happen, and it didn't happen. And then I got married, and when I was in Sweden, we planned to meet in Sweden, and it didn't happen. Me and my wife, we went to do a leadership school in Mexico. He called me on my birthday and says, can we meet? I can fly to Mexico. We planned to meet, and it didn't happen. So after about 5 times, I just felt like this was never going to happen. And so a dear friend of mine, a sister of mine, not blood sister, but we've been mentored by the same person. She called me and says, David, I'd really like to speak to you when you come to Germany. Me and my wife went to Germany, and she said to me, David, I want to tell you something. It might be very hard for you to hear, but I sense the Lord say to me, you are never going to meet your father, and God will give you the grace for it. And surely I never got to meet my father. I remember, I think it was 2011 or 12, I got a text message saying your father has passed away. Yes. And I felt the Lord just say, you helped to finance the whole funeral out of honor for your father.
Yeah.
So I financed, me and my wife.
You paid for all?
Yeah, paid for all.
In Germany?
No, he died in England. But he was buried in Africa. Unfortunately, I couldn't go, but I felt to cover the whole funeral.
Did he have all the kids?
I was the only child.
No way.
I was the only child. Yeah.
It must have been painful for him.
It was painful, but at the same time, I did not know him. But of course, I would have wanted to meet him, but it never happened.
What I meant is, must have been painful for you, but also for him.
Yes, 100%, yeah.
But did you go for the funeral?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I spoke to my mother, and we just felt like it would have been awkward to meet your father on the burial day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I felt to honor his life, because I always believe in honoring your father and your mother. I felt to cover the whole funeral. Yeah.
Well, this is awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of inheritance?
From his side, no. And there was a reason for it. I just felt not to go that direction.
Yeah.
I just felt it was kind of awkward to inherit something from someone that I had no connection with.
Yeah, but sometimes it comes to your direction.
Yes, it comes, but I felt not to go that direction.
Okay.
Yeah, I just felt, He had promised, like, I want to give you my inheritance. But for me, it was more like I needed a father more than what he could give me in terms of inheritance. Yeah.
And I think this talks to to many of us, both in the side of many of us didn't have the opportunity to meet our fathers. We have friends that don't know their fathers.
Yes, yeah.
And then you have to connect to your Holy Father.
Yeah.
And your testimony specifically brings to my mind that many of us want what God can give us, but not God himself.
True.
And you went the other way around. Like, if I don't have my Father, I don't want anything that he has. Like, makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the challenge we have today is, what a child wants is a parent, a father and a mother. And I think the challenge we have is we have many fathers and mothers who give their children a lot of devices, a lot of these gadgets to make them happy. But it's false happiness, it's temporal happiness. And so we can give them so many things, but we are not putting values and love in them. So what a child really wants at the end of the day is love, attention, affirmation. Because without that, you can give them an inheritance. I've seen dear friends of mine coming from very wealthy families. They are given an inheritance, but they don't know their identity. And all the inheritance is just lost within years.
Fades away.
Yeah. And it's so sad, but it's a normal pattern.
Yeah.
Your mother is a Christian?
Yeah, my mother was a Christian, amazing woman of faith. And, there's a story in the Bible of the Apostle Paul saying, Timothy, I see the faith that was upon your grandmother and your mother, and I'm so guaranteed that you carry that faith. My grandmother who raised me was an amazing woman of faith. My mother was a woman of faith. And I'm so grateful to have been brought up under, a house like that. Even though we didn't have fathers or grandparents, or grandfather, but the grandmother and the mother really played an amazing role to be where I am today. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is this story that you had to be hidden? What was that? How does...
Yeah, because of being brought up in a cross-racial marriage, it's like, are you white? Are you black? It was like either white or black. So anything in between was like, what is this? And so for my father and mother to have me, they were called traitors on both ends.
Oh, it's like Romeo and Juliet.
Exactly. So I was born out of like parents who betrayed both sides. And so that's why I had to be hidden. And I thought I was going to only be hidden for 2 years. But my grandmother started realizing that because they were so wealthy, people wanted to make sure that the police or the government would take everything that we had. So my grandmother had to move from one place to another and just kept on hiding me. I only got to stay with my mother when I was 10 years old. So I was raised by my grandmother.
But was it a crime?
It was a crime.
But the baby would have to pay for this crime?
The parents will have to pay for it. Because we need to remember, this is war.
Oh, they were hiding the proof of the crime, not yourself.
No, they were literally hiding me.
Yeah, but...
Exactly, yes. The proof of the crime, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
But I was the proof of the crime.
Yeah, I see,
exactly.
I see.
Yes.
Not that, like the history in Israel that would go into after the babies, no.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. I only got to move in with my mother when I was 10 years old and move into a new family.
And why was that possible when you were 10?
That was hard because I woke up one morning and I was told I'm leaving the school that I was at. I'm moving into a new school and I'm moving into a new house. Me and my grandmother, we were very, very tight because of the speech impediment I had. It used to take me about 4 minutes to say one sentence. So my grandmother was so patient. And she became a mother, a father, an amazing role model. And so when I moved, I felt something that was so precious was taken away from me. And so you'll be happy coming into a new family, but for me, it kind of brought trauma. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
And your grandfather?
Yeah. My grandfather passed away before I was even born.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And did you have like aunts or
Yes,
uncles?
I was raised by my grandmother and also my aunt, my mother's sister. Yeah.
You were surrounded by women,
I mean, exactly.
strong women, I guess.
Very strong, godly women. Yeah.
This is something that happens a lot in Brazil. Fathers go away for no good reason.
Yes.
They go away, just go away, and those guys they are brought up by their mothers and grandmothers, and sometimes this is not good for the identity, the masculine identity.
True.
And I don't know how it was.
Yeah, I think like when you look now, a lot of men have never been fathered.
Yeah,
They've been mothered.
yeah,
Wow.
So when they've been mothered, and I honor every woman who has single mothers who have paid a price to raise these amazing sons and daughters, and they had to take two roles, the mother role and also the father role. But the challenge is, when I speak on identity, I always say fathers are the ones who speak identity upon the son and the daughter. This is my beloved son in whom I love, the father's voice. Mothers are beautiful nurturers. When a child gets hurt, he doesn't run to a father, he runs to a mother, because the mothers are comforters and they love. But when a family only has a mother, what I've seen in the long run is, I hope this is okay to say, it creates an unhealthiness in the sense that, when a mother has to win the child at a certain age, and when that doesn't happen, in the long run, it creates something I call son husbands.
Please elaborate.
Okay. The Bible says, a man shall leave his father and mother to be united with his wife. So you live to cleave.
Okay.
It's hard to cleave when you haven't left.
Okay.
So when a mother has just raised a son without the father figure, it creates sometimes an unhealthy soul tie. That unhealthy soul tie, when the son wants to date a girl, he needs this enormous approval from the mother. And if he finds a lady who is strong, naturally the mother would not want that girl. She wants a girl who is passive and submissive because she's the one who still dominates the son. So that creates a son husband because the mother has emotional needs that are not being met, and they can only be met by the son.
It's son husband in one side, and then it's going to be husband son in the other side.
Yeah.
Because he's going to need a mother.
Yeah. And you see this, it runs rampant across the globe today.
Across the globe?
Across the globe today.
I thought it was just in Brazil.
No, I've seen this in Brazil.
Yeah, different nations, the same problem.
Same problem, because it's a universal problem. It's not just a geographical problem.
Have you ever heard of this tale? It's an European, I guess it's Scandinavian tale, Iron John.
No, elaborate.
It's a tale of a boy, but it's in a nutshell.
Antonio loves this.
Yes,
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
It says so
single
much.
podcast he told this.
Yeah.
But now I'm telling in English.
Yes, okay, yeah, please. I'd love to hear.
There's a story of a forest. There's whenever guys come into this forest, they disappear. So the king hires a knight, and the knight goes inside this forest, and there's a well, and the dog of the knight is taken by a hand that comes from the well and takes this dog. So the knights comes to the king and say, hey, there's a well, there's a monster inside. So the king sends the soldiers and they empty the well, and there's a monster inside, which is a big, tall monster like a Sasquatch. They take it and they take it to the yard of the castle of the king.
Yeah.
And lock him in a cage,
Yes,
in a big cage. Then the son of the king is playing within the yard, and his ball goes into the cage. And he goes to the monster, which is Iron John, and say, "Give me my ball back." And the monster say, "I will give it back if you open the cage." And the boy runs. Then he comes back and say, "Hey, give me my ball." And he said, "No, open the cage." And then the boy says, "But I don't know where the key is." And Iron John said, "The key is beneath your mother's pillow." Wow. And then the boy says, "But she won't allow me to get the key." And then Iron John said, "Hey, well, you're going to have to steal it." So the boy steals the key, opens the cage, and flees with the giant.
Okay.
And he's big and he's hairy and, So, in this specific part of the story, the moral is you have to steal your maturity out from your mom, because she won't let you. She just won't. It's in her nature. And the father helps you in this process. So in this specific tale, the father didn't help him. He was absent.
Yes.
And then afterwards, in the end of the tale, he's present again. But he has to steal. So I see many boys right now that doesn't have the strength or the will or the knowledge to go away from their mothers.
Yes.
Because they're way too being nurtured and being taken care of, and they just can't go away. And then you give us words like this son, husband, and husband, son. Make sense?
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense, because usually sometimes fathers leave when children are like maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, and that already creates trauma. So they can grow up to be 40 years old, but their emotions were logged at the age of 3 years old. So you have a big boy in the house, but who is emotionally unstable because of the trauma happened at a very young age. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
And he's unable to provide, he's unable to protect, he's unable to, because he was not literally able to do this.
So then in the house, when that guy gets married, he can't lead the family. And he's very passive, very insecure, very double-minded, because why? There was no father figure who was a role model that he could learn from. Yeah.
One of our main objectives is to try and teach.
Yes.
Because we have a whole bunch of guys that are already in this situation. They're married.
Yes, yeah.
They have kids, but they have this soul tie.
Yes.
And what would be your advice, both for us as a movement, but, for whomever is listening to this podcast to go out of this soul tie? And
I remember being asked soon after I got married by my wife's auntie. She's a well-known psychologist in Sweden, very professional, amazing woman. She asked me a very blunt question that if someone would be asked that question, you'd be really offended and very hurt. And the question was, David, since you never grew up with a father, what makes you think you're going to be a good father to your kids?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question. It can offend you, but for me, I was so glad she asked me a question like that. And knowing that I didn't have a father growing up, even though my mother married my stepfather, our level of conversation since I moved in the house to when I moved out of the house was good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. So we could we could drive together in a car. We would not say anything to each other.
This is crazy.
So fathers were feared more than you could have dinner. I don't even remember having dinner with my father on the same table, my stepfather.
Explain to us what you told me about being a father in Africa.
Usually a father is not someone that you socialize with, do things with. a father is someone to be feared.
Oh.
So basically, a father, we would not have dinner on the same table. He would have dinner in his own office, in his own room.
Imagine this.
So he tells you what you must do, almost like, he's a commander, he's a general, he's the boss of the house, and everyone says, yes, sir. And so, but there's no emotional connection. And so when men grow without that emotional connection with their fathers, when daughters grow without the emotional connection with their fathers, they don't know how to handle the opposite sex. They don't know how to be a man in terms of their personality and also in terms of their manhood. And so for me, then growing up in that environment, I knew one day that if I was going to get married, I needed things to change in my foundations. So I was afraid of getting married. I made a vow, I will never get married. I will be I'll get into celibacy, just me and Jesus and all that. But this goes beyond whether you're Christian or not Christian. This is to everyone. We need to deal with the identity crisis. And
whenever you're married or not.
Christian or non-Christian, we all have to deal with the identity crisis. Because that identity crisis, if it's not dealt with, it's going to come out in relationships, friendships, and in marriages. And so I had to find healing. Because I knew my upbringing was not normal, even though I thought it was normal. Because when you don't know anything different, you just think this is normal. And so I had to find healing and, went to a counselor, and the counselor told me, David, with everything that you've gone through, you need 14 counselors and specialists to just help you with your situation. I wasn't encouraged by that, but I had to find father figures. Yeah, and grateful and thankful to this man called Paul Hawkins. He's been a father figure in my life for almost 24 years. And
he's a mentor?
He's a mentor, but he's not just a mentor. He's a father. Because you can have a mentor who mentors you in a gift, in a talent, in your occupation, but are they a father? So for him, he is a father more than a mentor, even though he mentors me through being a father.
I understand.
Yeah. And so what that did in my life was it broke the perfectionist that I had. And it broke the performance-based identity I had, which is something I struggled with for almost 19, 20 years. My identity was based on performance. If you told me I couldn't do something, I'll prove it to you. Not because I could do it. The motivation factor was to prove. And you get to a point now where you are, where you end up competing with yourself.
You never win.
Since you never win, it then leads you into oppression, depression, and suicide thoughts began to run rampant in my mind at the age of 19 years old. Because I couldn't speak, I couldn't tell anyone. And I had a choice, do I commit suicide or do I find help? And I found help. Because the fear of dying freaked me out. So I was like, no, there has to be the opposite of what I'm going through. And that's when I sought help. But men don't usually find help because of this machismo. Because sometimes when you are born in shame-based cultures, you rather die in the closet than tell anyone that you need help.
If you can have an advice for men in general.
So honestly, for men in general, I would say, we have many leaders, but we have few fathers. Honestly, I would say seek help. I'm a living testimony of seeking help because I needed help from myself. And I also needed help to become who I am today. So reach out. There are many, many, many programs out there that you can find help and that can help you because today you have a lot of men struggling with mental health. A lot of men, but they don't talk about it because you drink your mental health away. You see what I mean? That's why alcoholism increases, because why? We are in so much pain and we try to numb that pain through drugs and, through sex and through, alcohol. But you can't numb it. It just creates another ongoing problem. And so I'll say find help. And there are so many people out there who are willing to help people. And how do they help? They listen to your story. Tell me your story. Someone just said, David, tell me your story. I was like, who are you? And that began to release every pain, every anguish, every anger, every stress. Because until I was 21 years old, you could punch me in the face. I wouldn't feel any pain. Because why? I was so numb. And when God began to heal me, the first time I ever cried was when I was 21 years old. I was so shocked, like, what is this? I was so shocked, I was like, wow. Literally shocked, and because I didn't think I had any tears in me. Because why? You are logged and loaded.
Oh.
And how was the event that
Actually, it was
bring this?
Yeah, it was through a Bible school I did called Discipleship Training School, and
In Zimbabwe?
Yes, in Zimbabwe, in Bulawayo. And we had this speaker who came and shared his whole testimony about how he was a gangster in South Africa, everything that he did. And I'd never met a man who shared his story until I was 21 years old.
Wow.
He was so vulnerable. I was like, who are you? When he shared everything he went through, and I could just see the life and the hope that he had, that gave me an opportunity. And then he said, class, every one of you this week, you are going to share your real story. And as I was sharing my real story, I was nervous, I was shaking, because I was now being vulnerable for the first time in 21 years.
It was just for men? Or
No. It was a school of men and women. We were 14 students from all over the world. And this was our second week. Our first week, you are checking each other out, and comparing each other out and all that. And when he shared his story on Monday, he then says, on Tuesday, all the 14 students, it's your time to share your story. On Tuesday, no one got up to say anything. No one. First session, second session. On Wednesday, first session, no one got up to say anything. And I remember me and my other guys like, no, one of us should go first. Then a girl from England got up. She shared her whole story. And we were like, oh my God. She was vulnerable. Who we thought she was not who she really was. She gave us permission to be vulnerable. And I remember getting up there. I don't remember what I said, but I shared my story, and tears were running down from my right eye. And I'm trying to, push it back. I'm trying to be strong. I'm like, because we were taught men don't cry. Yeah. So I grew up being taught men don't cry. Crying was a weakness. And for me, I'm like, I'm not going to cry. So now I'm tearing up. And it was like floods just running, gushing down. And that gave me permission from there to be vulnerable. That was in January 1998.
The power of the testimony.
Exactly. And so that just allowed me to say, I need more help.
And your healing started there.
That started the healing journey.
Amazing.
The talents and the giftings were there, but I was locked and loaded. And so it brought the journey of healing. That's why I can talk about my story without feeling shameful because why? I found healing through Christ.
And how this experience influenced your childhood?
So,
children.
You should see my kids. Oh, my kids are lovely. They don't have the dramas I had to go through, because I had to say, I saw a pattern from my grandmother, my mother, and also through my life. And I didn't want my kids to continue with that pattern. Someone had to stand in the gap and say, no more traumas, no more this junk. And I had to deal with my junk so that my kids can have better lives. So the freedom I found wasn't just for me, but it was also for my kids. And I also hope for my kids' kids. Yeah.
It's a redeeming.
Yeah. Yeah, because my kids are confident. Like my son, he could handle big stages at the age of 9 years old. For me, 9 years old, I was traumatized. My daughter, they're all worship leaders. They're having the best times of their lives, and they are doing well, very creative, confident, and bold. And also they are very sensitive. They honor. When someone is in need, they help. They are precious kids. And I'm not saying that because I'm their parent. I'm saying that because it is the truth. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you share with us the history of your... Well, I was going to ask about your marriage, but
yes,
please tell us about your talking impediment. What is this?
A speech impediment.
Speech impediment
was... I had a challenge to speak, so I used to stammer and stutter. When I would open my mouth to try and say anything, my jaws would just lock. And when they lock, it would take about 4 minutes for the muscles to kind of loosen, and then I'd open my mouth to try to speak.
It was emotional or physiological? Emotional, I guess.
It was all the above. When I would feel stressed, exactly. When I would feel nervous, I never wanted to be in a position of speaking. My prayer was, God, if you're ever going to call me to do anything, don't call me to speak because of the embarrassment. I remember in one school, I was in grade 5, and my teachers asked 5 people to share like a story, and the whole story was where tomatoes were originally found from. And the 5 of us, everyone had to memorize 3 or 4 sentences. And then I was the 3rd person, and in front of all my brothers and sisters and the whole school. And I started the first sentence. Tomatoes first grew, and then my jaws just locked. And the whole school literally began to laugh, and the disappointment of bringing shame to my family, and they didn't unlock. And the person next to me was waiting for me to finish my sentence. Then she would continue. She couldn't continue. And so it brought an embarrassment to the whole team, and also to my whole class and to my whole family. And I made a vow that day. The vow was, I will never speak in public until I was 21 in May in 1998. That's when I spoke in public for the first time.
Wow. So this, I guess this happened only if you talked in public.
No, even at home. I never spoke at home.
You didn't speak?
No. I grew up not speaking for 21 years of my life.
How can that be?
I never wanted to give people power to make a mockery out of my weakness. So even I could do any theater as long as I didn't speak.
And you managed to get out of school and
yes,
go to college? And
I went to school, went to college, and so growing up, I knew the answer before the question was asked. So I would write the answer to my friend who would be sitting next to me, and within a minute, the teacher will ask that question, and then I would point, and then he would get all the credit.
Do you think this was prophetic?
Now, when I look back, yes, it was prophetic. But back then, I thought I had a gift of good guessing. I just knew things.
Well, that's the prophetic
honestly, yes,
ministry. It's the
exactly.
gift of good
Yeah.
guessing.
So, because I did. So, being quiet, I used to avoid people. When I see someone coming my direction and I knew they were going to speak to me, I'll change direction. So I had a coping mechanism, and the coping mechanism was like, he's a shy guy. And I put on that identity. He's shy, he's passive, and everything in me is boiling. No, I'm not shy. But I can't speak, so I'll rather just make you think whatever you want to think about me until I was 21.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How you
Recovered.
How I recovered, it was actually in April in 1998. It was during a week when we had this guy who was teaching on my discipleship training school, and I was so looking forward to going for lunch. And this was on Wednesday, because Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we used to have bread and soup. But Wednesday was when we had like good meat, you know what I mean? And I felt in my heart not to go for lunch. I felt God saying, let's just go for a walk. And he began to convict me about my attitudes that I had towards certain people. And I just took some time to just repent and ask God for forgiveness of my attitude, the way I judged people. And it's because I didn't come from a charismatic, or I just came from a very, very traditional background. So, the things of the Spirit and all that, even though I grew up in Africa, I knew things, but I was very skeptical and very judgmental towards people, maybe from the Pentecostal side. And God convicted me of that. And I just said, God, you can heal me, baptize me in the Holy Spirit, and just the goodness of God. God just supernaturally touched me and healed me from that speech impediment. And ever since then, I can't stop speaking now.
Wow.
Because I've got 21 years to catch up on being silent.
That is good.
Yeah.
I have a notation here that you were resurrected.
Okay.
How was the story?
The story is, I was born in 1976. 2 years old in 1978, since I grew up and being raised by my grandmother. And my grandmother realized that I was in pain. But when you are a 2-year-old child, you cannot express what you're going through. And so she took me to a clinic. And when she took me to a clinic, the nurses, they found like a lump. I still have the scar here. Yeah. And they found the lump, and they realized that it was a boil. I don't know what a boil is. Like, you know what a boil is? It's a lump that is like pus inside.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a boil. But the boil was very big. It wasn't on the outside, it was in the inside. And they said he needs to have an operation, because if this boil explodes, it can cause brain damage. And so my grandmother said, okay. They took me to Salisbury Hospital, which is called Harare Hospital now. And so they were able to get hold of my mother. And so my mother was able to come. And since she was the guardian, so she had to sign the documents for me to be operated. And it was meant to just be a normal procedure, very simple procedure. Put the child to sleep, cut open.
Punction.
Exactly. And then just drain out all the fluids and everything, stitch it up, and then the child. So my mother agreed for the operation, brought into the theater, the place where you get operated, and they operated, and the operation was meant to be successful, but after the time I was meant to wake up, I didn't wake up. And so they did everything to resuscitate the child and try to get the child back. And then the doctors came to my mother after they've done everything and says, can we please speak to you? And my mother was like, is everything okay? I'm sorry, the operation was not successful. And my mother, being a 25-year-old single mom, was like, what do you mean? I came with a child who was alive, and you're telling me my child was like, what happened? And says, no, we have done everything we could do, in the last hour and a half to resuscitate the child, but we are sorry. And my mother, being my mother, she was like, can you please take me into the operation room? And they were like, no, the doctors are still, doing the final, preparation and everything like that. And so eventually my mother went into the operation room and she locked the door behind her. And she prayed for almost an hour or so. Then my mother says, like, Thomas, it was almost like a righteous indignation just rose within her. She hit the baby so hard on the chest and commanded life, to come up. Because before she did that, she was praying, God, if you resurrect my child, I'll dedicate my child to serve you all the days of his life. And so she hit the baby on the chest so hard, and the baby screamed. And so she had to go and call the doctors, and they had to, rechange the documents that they'd written. So my mother, from that age, she knew the hand of God was upon my life. Even though, of course, as a child, you still have to go through your whole journey, and as a teenager and all that. So
that was amazing.
That's the story. Yeah.
I imagine like the mother saying, okay, give me the child.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's alive again.
Yeah. No.
Take it back.
No. Mom had to really pray.
Wow.
And because like my grandmother almost had to do something similar to my mother.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
But I think I heard something about your kid.
Yes, I almost had to do something similar to my daughter, Gabriella. Because Gabriella, when she was born, 2 weeks later, we woke up one morning and her whole body was yellow in complexion. And we did not know what it was, but we just knew something was wrong. We rushed her to the hospital in Örebro in Sweden, and they took her to a child emergency. And after a couple of hours, they were doing their test, and one doctor who was not even meant to be in that area just came, and she was passing, and she came back and says, whose child is that? And the nurses, like the parents are there, and said, rush this child right now into an emergency room. They rushed Gabriella to the emergency room, and they took the big needle and stuck it in the back. I nearly passed out because we are like, what's going on? And they found out that she had meningitis. But this was very bad. And, because doctors, they never tell you whether it's life or, but you could just tell that this is not going to be good. Mm-hmm. And my wife was also not feeling well. So for the first 3 days, my wife couldn't see my daughter. So I was running between my wife's room, my daughter's room. And I remember in an elevator, the Lord just spoke to me, if I bring your child home, would you trust me? And I said, God, it will hurt, but I'll trust your character. I relinquished my right as a parent. I said, God, I trust, it will hurt, but I trust your character. And then when I came down from the elevator, I was called I went to see Gabriella, and the doctor says, can we please speak to you? You can imagine my heart. Mm-hmm. And says, we don't know how to tell you this, because they are very polite, very loving. Yeah. And they try to find the right words to comfort you. And they said, we don't know how to tell you this. And everything in me, I'm just like, just tell me. And they said, because Gabriella had like wires all over her head and, mouth, that's how she was breathing.
She was like 1 year old?
No, she was only 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old?
2 weeks old,
yeah. 2 weeks.
So she's wired up. And then she just said, in the last few minutes, we began to see the numbers on the monitor beginning to go in the right direction. And I was like, what? And 3 days later, she was discharged.
What have you learned from this experience as a father?
As a father, for me, I felt like I needed to be there for my child, and not just be there, but to literally pray for her. I was just, I would hold like like a little dinky hand, you know what I mean? And even to this day, even like, you know, I still like we do like a little dinky because there was just that connection. And my bond with Gabriela, it's beautiful. She tells me everything about what she's going through. So we have a deep connection of a father and a daughter, same as my son as well. And so we have that deep, healthy connection. Whatever she's going through, she says, Daddy, I know the tone of her voice. I said, okay, do you want to go for a walk? She says, let's go for a walk. Do you want to go for a bike ride? We just go for a bike ride and then we sit down, we buy our ice cream, or we just go for a walk. I don't even say anything because I'm just wanting her to know that I'm here, she's safe. And then she stops and says, Daddy, give me a hug. I just hug, and then she just bawls. And then she tells me what she's going through. Because I've learned not to be a counselor to my kids or a preacher to my kids. I've learned to be a father and a listener. Because sometimes in our work, we sometimes can bring our work towards our children. I remember one time I raised my voice because I had a migraine. Gabriela was having fun, but she was screaming. But I raised my voice and Gabriela says, Daddy, please do not use your preaching voice at me. So I came to my daughter, Gabriela, and I said, Gabriela, I know better. I shouldn't have used my preaching voice towards you. I ask for forgiveness. I repent. And because they also need to understand that when we do wrong, we don't cover it. Mm-hmm. Then it also empowers them not to cover it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
But also you learned how to give it to the Lord.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, give it to the Lord.
Because as you explained, it seems like the miracle happened.
Yeah, give it to the Lord.
When the moment that you, like Abraham and Isaac, like, it's yours.
It's yours.
All delivered.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So just learning to say, God, these kids you've blessed us with, I entrust them back to you. You've entrusted us to love them, believe in them, champion them emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, and so that they can be well. But at the same time, they are yours that you've entrusted us. And may we be good role models to reflect your character towards our kids.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, man.
How was it that you are a prophet? Do you recognize this position, or were you anointed as such?
Even though I never would use that name and that title on myself at all, I try to stay away from any titles. I just usually just say my name is David. That's the name my mother gave me, and I like it. Nothing before my name, and after my name is my last surname, full stop. But I think with the way I was raised, before I ever heard about the prophetic or any of that stuff, because I grew up in the bush of Africa. But I think I began to, maybe from a very young age of about 3 years old, almost knowing things that were going to happen tomorrow before they happened, almost knowing who's going to come and visit us before they even came to visit us, almost knowing what road to take when I'm going to school and what not road to take. To only realize if I had taken this road, there was a child who was murdered on that road. And so, but since no one had ever taught me about it, you grow up thinking, but maybe it's just good guessing. Mm-hmm. But when you begin to realize you can't be guessing 100% right all the time, you know what I mean? But then you start realizing maybe God just made me in a different, unique way. And because I started realizing the warfare upon my life was not normal, was not normal. To a point, I would meet witches who would tell you straight up, we're going to kill you. You will not be alive by tomorrow.
No way.
Yes, yeah. for me, that was natural. That was normal. And so you begin to realize that why would you want to do something to a child who's only 4 years old?
Out of the blue, like
what have I done to you? You know what I mean? But in every assignment the enemy had towards me, God had an amazing level of protection around me. And so you begin to see that, because I used to walk about 8 kilometers to school and 8 kilometers back to school through the bush.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so, which was a place an enemy can just, do anything harmful to you. But God will be like, sometimes I'll be about to take a step towards this road and my leg will not walk. Will not be able to have the strength to. And then when I take this road, and then to only find out something happened there on the day, almost the hour, if I had taken that route.
Well, that was the gift that you had all over your life.
I would say so.
But
I didn't recognize it.
You didn't.
Yeah, until certain events began to happen, and I started to realize, okay, this is not a coincidence. Once or twice, but when you begin to see a pattern, you'll be like, no, this is very different. Yeah.
And who gave you language for that? I guess it was this discipleship that you did.
My mother played a part, but she didn't have the full language to it, because in Africa, we didn't have this language of prophetic people. We used to have pastors, priests, and, bishops and evangelists, but not the prophetic.
But how come? You have the witches and all the spiritual warfare going on, and the Christian side, you don't have the same?
Yeah, sadly to say that.
Oh.
Sadly to say, I think the prophetic really began to emerge in the 90s, like late 80s, 90s, like at least in Zimbabwe, and so, yeah. So to be called a prophet back then, it was almost like very weird, what I mean? And so the prophetic was like suppressed. But my Anglican pastor, Tim Neal, the late Reverend Tim Neal, he was unique. He spoke a language that I was like, this man is ahead of his time. So he began to somehow kind of bring a bit of the language to it, but it's not as it is now. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there was a recovery of the fivefold ministries around this time.
Yes, yeah.
But then, did you have like a calling, or you have an anointing?
I think for me, it's a calling. Yeah. It's not like someone laid hands on me and said, now you're going to be prophetic. No, I think I was already prophetic from 3-4 years old.
It was organic.
Even though I could not speak, which actually made me to be a great listener. So that's because if I was able to speak a lot, maybe I wouldn't be able to hear a lot. So being a great listener, it just allowed me to be able to hear and know things, but it also led me into intercession for people. Yeah.
When you were in this discipleship, you were like 21.
Yes, 21. Yeah.
And then did you get into missions or?
Yes, yeah. I actually went into missions. The story is like, I at the age of 20 years old, it was in 1997, and I was just having my devotion time, and I just felt God said, let's drop everything you are doing. I was studying systems analysis and computer designing, and was involved in business with fashion, playing soccer, and also representing Zimbabwe in also long jump. So I felt the Lord said, drop everything, let's go into mission field. Now you can imagine me trying to bring that conversation to my mother. I want to be a missionary. Like missionaries come from overseas to Africa. Not
all the
exactly
the other way around.
But I knew the hand of God was upon my life, that I just could not turn it down, or even I had no understanding of what it was. So I went to my youth pastor, Pilani, and I said, Pilani, for the last 3 days, I've been getting these abbreviations, DTS, Discipleship Training School. I had no idea of what it was. He told me what it was, and I felt peace in my heart. I didn't apply for the school. I just took a train and left to go to do the school. But I had to tell my mother, before I told my mother, I had to fast and pray for 10 days before I could tell my mother. Because my mother, she was prophetic.
Oh.
And she will tell you a dream you had last night before you told her. So me and my mother growing up, we used to play hide and seek. When she comes through that door, I'm out through the back door. If she asks you a question, you need to know the answer you're going to give her, because that answer can put you into trouble. Mm-hmm. If she asks you, how is school? She's not just asking you for the sake of asking you. She knows that you didn't do well in your tests. So she's wanting you to tell her the truth.
Giving you the opportunity.
The opportunity to tell the truth. And, and so, but my mom, she was so black and white in the sense of her sharpness. So she didn't have many friends. Mm-hmm. And so because she never used to beat around the bush, she just get to the point. Mm-hmm. And that can be very intimidating for anyone, especially in a warm culture. Yeah. So, but I think I see a bit of a thread from like her family line, but then mine was just, I think, very sovereign because of how God would just like encounter me. Sometimes even just like you are walking and the Lord just stops your feet. And it's like he just puts like a wall in front of you and you see this big black mamba running in front of you.
No way.
Had I taken that step, that would have created a conflict. And you know how black mambas are? So that has happened about 2 or 3 times in my life.
Yeah.
And the Lord just stops my legs and they couldn't move. And there's just a black mamba runs in front. I said, wow, God, thank you. And so, so even just like visions and dreams, even the angelic and all that, and sometimes just be walking and there'll be like a tap on your shoulder. It's just God saying, I'm with you. And of course, sometimes it says, don't turn back, because if you turn, you can't handle the intensity of it. Yeah.
So you have you have visions, you have open sight.
Yes, even my daughter Gabriella, since she was 2 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, even Gabriella. Yeah, Gabriella would tell you straight up, like, she was 2 years old. She would tell you, can you please leave the room? I want to spend time with Jesus at the age of 2 years old. Yeah. And you have to be a very secure father when your 2-year-old kid tells you to leave the room, because your daughter wants to spend time with Jesus. 45 minutes every day. Just worship and praising God. And you tell her, hey, did God speak to you through dreams last night? My daughter Gabriella one day says, Daddy, I don't dream. Dreams and visions are for you. Me, God speaks to me through angels. But the confidence, the boldness, I didn't have that when I was 3 years old.
So you had like the prophetic walking with you throughout your life.
I would say so, yes.
And now you have a ministry, or
yes, yeah, we have a ministry called Keruzo, Kingdom School. Our heart with this ministry, God gave me a vision when I was the year 2000, but He didn't give me the permission to start then, because I had to.
The year 2000, you were like 24.
Yes, exactly. And so, He just said, not now. Because sometimes we are given a vision and we quickly run ahead. But the vision has to be birthed, incubated through prayer and all that. It was only like in 2000 and, around 2009, 10, that's when the Lord released me into the vision. My heart for the vision is called Keruzo, our Kingdom School. The word Keruzo is a Greek word which means to preach, to herald the message of the king. Because back in those old days, when a king had a message, you didn't have like the radios that we have today. So he used to find someone called a kerus who would take the message of the king and he would go and declare it in the street corners. So the heart of the school is basically prophetic supernatural evangelism.
Almost like a prophet.
Yeah. So So we ran that ministry for about 11 years in Germany. And because sometimes to go in Germany and you want to preach to people like, that's weird. But you can go to McDonald's, Starbucks, in the streets, and you'll be like, hi, how are you? How's your day? And God just begins to give you download. Hey, so how are you doing, Sarah? How do you know my name? I don't know your name, but I know someone who knows your name. And then it just opens them up to like, wow, that God knows them so well to specific details that leads them into a supernatural encounter with Jesus. Yeah.
How the prophetic helps you as a father?
I try not to use gifts over my kids.
Really?
No, I try not. Even if I know certain things about them, I don't want to abuse those gifts on my kids. I just want to be a father.
Wow.
So, and it also requires trust. Even their phones, I don't try to, God, give me a password for my kids, then I know what they are watching. No, I trust my kids and I pray for them, because then I don't want to abuse the gift towards my kids or towards anyone. Yeah.
This ministry that you lead, ministry together with Ingela?
Yes, yeah.
Do you have, where's the headquarters right now?
We were based in Germany, in Herrenhut, for 11 years. Then we moved the whole ministry to Brazil, to Rio. That was 2019 and 2020, and COVID hit. So we had to rescale the ministry back to Sweden. Because of COVID, we couldn't do anything for 3 years. So, but we were still doing some small things and all that. But this year, actually this week, we are running the ministry in Fortaleza, and so the school starts on Wednesday this week.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't think we're going to be able to release this this program so fast, but it would be so nice to have this. And you lived in Zimbabwe, and then you
moved to Australia. I went to Australia the year 2000 to go and do a school of evangelism. That is
YWAM? No.
Yes, with YWAM. Yes, yeah. That is where I met Ingela. But there was nothing on for about almost 2 years. We were just good friends that naturally grew into a deeper friendship, and also seeing our future, our callings lining up.
Best way.
Yes, and we felt like, no, this, and we submitted to our leaders. They all prayed about it, and they blessed it.
So you married in Australia?
We got married in Sweden.
Sweden?
Yeah, the year 2003.
In Stockholm?
In Örebro, 2 hours out of Stockholm.
And then you lived in Sweden, or you?
After we got married, we went back to Australia and to continue, serving with the ministry we were part of in Sydney with YWAM. And then after that, we moved back to Sweden in January of 2004, because I also wanted to learn Swedish. And then, we moved to Mexico to do a leadership training school with the founders of YWAM, Lauren and the late Lauren and his wife, Darlene. And then we went back to Australia to continue running schools of evangelism. And then we moved to Switzerland.
Switzerland?
Yes, in Lausanne, to run schools of evangelism. And then, we felt the Lord saying, take a step back now. That's when the vision of Caruso was birthed.
So you were with YWAM all this time?
Yes,
And then you stepped away and started Caruso?
Yeah, so Caruso has been under YWAM. So
it's under YWAM?
Yeah, it's been under YWAM, and and so even though it's a different ministry, but it's been under the umbrella of YWAM. Yeah.
Your kids, where did they? Where were they born?
They were all born in Sweden.
Sweden.
Yes, So they're pure Swedes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, this is amazing. Before we end, right now Caruso is in Germany?
No, it's no longer in Germany. It's now in Sweden. So the headquarters of Keruzo now is in Sweden.
But you run schools all over the world?
All over the world. So we are starting, like last year we ran one in Sweden, soon after COVID. And so this year it's here in Brazil, in Fortaleza. Itapipoca. Yes.
And if somebody that is hearing this podcast wants to enroll and do an application for
you can go on Instagram, just Keruzo Ministries, and you find it on Instagram. And we also we also have a website as well, which will attach it to the Instagram account.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have one last.
Yes, please.
You had a fashion business when you were 18.
18, 19, yeah. Actually, my mother,
she was a designer.
She was a designer. So growing up, the first thing you do when you come back from school, what do? You start cutting patterns. And so you learn that whole trade of fashion and all that. I don't usually would say this, but because you've asked, I did 1 year of modeling and in fashion. And so that's where it just got so excited about, but the modeling was prim and proper, only suits for men and all that. But I've always, growing up, we always grew up with a mother who had quality. A test in quality. And so when you play with materials, you know what materials that should mix and not mix and all that. And so it just naturally grew, and partnered up with a friend, so we were involved in that business. But now what I just do is I've mentored 2 people, or I still mentor 2 people in the whole area of fashion. Yeah. And I love, teaching on fashion and the identity of a designer. Because when you look at fashion today, a lot of the fashion today it's a bit dark, and it takes away so much creativity, because it's almost like, copy and paste, and then you just attach someone. So there's no more authenticity in fashion. So my heart is really, people who have a heart for fashion, just really encourage them in terms of their identity, because you can design out of broken identity or kingdom identity. Yeah.
The other day we were having dinner, and we were speaking about fashion and kingdom. And I know many people who they have this fashion business. They go to Milan, they go to Paris, they go to London and to New York.
Yes,
to understand what is the fashion, and they come back to Brazil and they replicate it. And then understand this is needed. Because you have to sell it.
Yeah, no, true.
What would be your advice for somebody who's in the fashion business to? You have to do both. Yeah. You have to sell what is sellable, but you have to, at the same time, have your own thing going on.
Brand. Yeah, exactly.
How to maintain your income and productivity and profit?
I think many people want to become very famous instantly. And I mean, social media can really help you, do that. But at the same time, it can also destroy you if you don't know how to go about it, especially in the fashion business. So my encouragement to people is, first of all, know who you are in terms of your identity. Because if you don't know who you are, that world is brutal. Wow. That world is so brutal. It's so dark. So you got to know who you are, or else you just be swallowed in. And the level of compromise, I've sat down with many Christians wanting to do fashion. And within about a month, they wrote back to me and says, David, I didn't agree with you, but now I understand what you mean. And the challenges of compromising are very high, because you want to come through the door. And that door opens other doors, but you are most likely going to compromise at least 90%. So I always say, find out who God has made you to be. And as a designer, you design out of who God has made you to be. It's okay to partner up, with other companies, whether it's like a month, and all that, but have your own kingdom DNA in terms of your design. People today, they want something that's authentic.
Yeah.
And when it's authentic, it says everything about the designer. So you allow God to design through you, but that designing through you comes out of your self-image and your kingdom identity.
Great.
And then when challenges, tests, and trials come, you don't have to live under this pressure because the level of anxiety, the level of stress and worry amongst designers and anyone in fashion, it's unthinkable. Exactly. Because it's rooted all in identity.
How to manage business, ministry, and family together?
It's not complicated. You can allow those things to rule you, or you can put healthy boundaries. And many people don't know how to put healthy boundaries. When I'm home, I don't talk about ministry. I connect with my sons, with my son and daughter, with my wife. We're not talking about, did you deliver this? Did you pray for this one? No. Yeah. When it's business, talk about business. When it's ministry, this is what we are going to do. And it should be one or the other. You try to incorporate it in a healthy way with healthy boundaries. Yeah.
Do you run any kind of business today?
No,
Only ministry?
Only ministry. Business, I help 2 people who run their businesses, but I'm very much involved in their business.
Okay, this kind of mentorship that you do is like holistic. You talk about spiritual...
everything.
In fashion?
Yes. Yeah, it's very holistic because there's no sacred and secular.
Yeah.
It's very holistic. Yeah.
This business, that you mentor, you don't have to tell what businesses it is, but they are based in Sweden or in Australia, and
one in America and one in the Netherlands.
Great.
And they're very successful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I told you the other day, one of them actually in the first year of starting the business, she had designs on Vogue magazine of Italy.
Oh.
And so, she's
we deeply believe that that whatever spiritual connection that you have when the hand of God is over your businesses,
becomes successful.
It is successful.
Yeah.
But you have to have this hierarchy of importance very clear in your life.
Yeah, 100%. Have your foundations right.
Yeah.
And they have people around you who are mentors, who will have,
that is good.
Yeah, who will walk with you and, speak into your life and help you to find that healthy balance. Then you don't run on zeal and hit a wall because you want to be able to do this 10 years time, 20 years time. You know what I mean? But many people start so fast, within 2 years, they've dropped their vision.
It's a chicken flight.
Exactly, yes, yeah. So there is, I think, even if you have goals and dreams, sometimes we forget to ask the process of how do I go about this, and also asking wisdom from others who have walked the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other question?
No.
I guess my last question is, I made a note here. How do you connect this prophetic generation to fatherhood?
Without fathers, we cannot be fully prophetic people or a generation. I'll say that again. Fathers raise up sons and daughters. Fathers and mothers raise up sons and daughters. If I was to be prophetic without fathers and mothers in my life, I would be an orphan with the giftings. Because a gifting does not say anything about you. It says everything that God has given you. And sadly, I've seen so many talented, gifted people who are orphans. And it's so sad. and their lifespan is not so long, because you are going to crash, you are going to hit the wall. So a prophetic generation is a generation that has been fathered and mothered. And people don't want fathers and mothers because, we are afraid of being controlled and all that. That's just basically maybe 1% or 2%. But honestly, we need fathers and mothers to walk with us. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, generational God. But today we feel like, I have this vision, I need to do it by myself, I don't need you. That's just a spirit of independence. That's just rebellion. It doesn't take you very far. So if we are going to be prophetic, Jesus was so prophetic. Look at his relationships with the Father. I cannot do anything unless I see my Father doing it. That's the prophetic.
Well,
exactly.
That is one.
So, yeah. So the prophetic is simply connecting with the heart of the Father and conveying the heart of the Father. But you need to have the Father.
We can see so many kids. They are so prophetic, and they think that is enough.
No.
And they dishonor their fathers or their spiritual fathers, because sometimes the young guy has a gift that is bigger than his pastor, or but then he dishonors and it ends up and even the dear mentor of mine, Paul Hawkins and Donna Jordan and Auntie Kate Moore, we might have different giftings, but I immensely need them in my life to not only protect me, but relationship, because the Bible says, honor your father and your mother, so that it may go well with you, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, relationally. There is a blessing that comes with honoring our fathers and mothers, honoring our leaders, honoring our pastors. But the generation today is, I can do this by myself. That spirit of independence, it's not kingdom. It's ungodly.
It's ungodly. It basically destroys us. And I've seen many people become just shipwrecked. So the prophetic without the Father, it's weird. Yeah. Because the Father is prophetic. Yeah, Jesus is prophetic. Yes. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
Do you want to give like a message, or do you want to leave something?
No, yes, definitely. I would love to. For anyone who is hearing this podcast, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever sphere that God has brought you into, my encouragement to you is come to the place of knowing your kingdom identity. There are two kinds of identities we have. Is our God-given identity, or a performance-based identity. God doesn't want us to have a performance-based identity. He wants us to know who we are, and He also wants us to know who He is. And out of the overflow of knowing who He is, we get to know who we are. And from that place, you can be so creative in everything that God leads you and directs you to do. And if you are a person who's listening to this, I would say, if you have any areas in your life, for example, traumas, father wounds and all that, there is a way out. God does never want you to see you hemorrhaging from past wounds of your childhood, but the loving Father wants to heal you so that you can bring healing and restoration to the various generations ahead of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Such an honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Such an honor. Yeah.
Bom, maravilha.
Yeah.
Terminamos aqui uma entrevista incrível. Manda uma mensagem pra gente com seus comentários. Se quiser entrar em contato com a gente vai deixar também o contato do Ministério Querusso, do David. Foi um prazer. Fiquem com Deus.
Valeu, pessoal. Até a próxima.